Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to be talking about securing generative AI and the techniques that we have built and that we are deploying in the field to have like trusted generative AI applications. The whole scenario is summit is about security, and there are so many security and privacy risks with generative AI, even though it is such a powerful and impactful technology, but we are seeing very few actual production use cases. There are various reasons for it, but in the news you are familiar with people, employees putting code out there onto ChatGPT, and privacy leakage attacks revealing like sensitive information, which are preventing models or applications from being deployed to production. So now let's take a step back and go to 101 and get like what are the different stages for training generative AI models in the first place, right? So there's a data preparation phase, there's a LLM training phase, and then there's LLM deployment, and last but the most important one is monitoring and refinement. So there are various steps involved in each of them, but there are also associated risks at each of those steps. So during the data preparation phase is when we have seen like data poisoning attacks and then sensitive information being disclosed into the training data as well. So that's one risk at data preparation stage. And then during training phase, we have seen like the inherent vulnerabilities that jailbreaking comes out with. And then there's recent research which says like fine-tuning of LLMs makes the models more toxic, more biased, and more vulnerable to jailbreak attacks. And in fact, that was from our own research lab. And during deployment, we do see like a lot of injection attacks taking place in the field. I mean, we thought it was just in theory, but once we have some models deployed, we are actually seeing them in practice from our own chatbot that we deployed. And then there is malicious use of these chatbots because there's a free form. I could just get free ChatGPT if I hack into it, right? And then there is risk during monitoring. One of the key points of confidential computing summit is how do I protect model IP when I have the model deployed, right? And also be compliant. And Steve Wilson was here this morning, and there's a whole OWASP top 10 for generative AI, and confidential computing solves one piece of this top 10 LLMs. So there's still like 9 that need to be addressed, and let's have a look at how we at Enkrypt take a look at it. So primarily, before we go into that, but what are the precautions that we can take, right? So at the data preparation stage, ensure that you have PII filtering so that you don't allow like sensitive data into it, and then analyze data for any poison attacks in there. And then when you're training the model, make sure that we have like a differentially private data that we train the model on, and then have very apt alignment training methodology so that the model behaves as expected. And the key aspect during this step is also to do red teaming that we have seen that exposes the vulnerabilities of these trained models. And once the model gets deployed, have proper guardrails like prompt guardrails or even like CASB firewalls, which protect against prompt injection attacks, privacy attacks, as well as toxicity from the model, or if somebody is sending a biased input, ensuring that it gets debiased before sending it to the model. And once you have, during monitoring phase, make sure that the proper API security and model security protocols are, so your still standard security should still be followed in there. So in a nutshell, what are the different solution methodologies that we are proposing here? During the development phase, have proper guardrails for inherent data poisoning mitigation, and then have red teaming of these generative AI models so that you can surface those vulnerabilities and fix them. And once you surface those vulnerabilities, have alignment training so that now you can have like harmless content from the model. And in the deployment phase, have proper like prompt input output guardrails, and then have the standard security during deployment, access control, auth, observability, and monitoring. So at Enkrypt, we pioneer all these solutions. So I'm going to talk about them one by one. So what's the purpose of red teaming is to surface the vulnerabilities primarily around jailbreaking, toxicity, bias, malware, how vulnerable is a model to generate malware, or even like if you send in code execution, it shouldn't do it, right? So the purpose of this is to, of course, like select safe models. There are 600,000 generative AI models on Hugging Face. Which one is apt for my use case, right? And then I also want to augment risk and governance teams with a red team report and a toxicity and bias report. So that's the purpose of red teaming LLMs. And then we also have like a LLM safety leaderboard, which gives you like a safety score or a risk score that will help you choose the appropriate LLM for your use cases. And then once you are looking to fine tune them, you can red team it and then get the safety score again. Primarily, what we have seen is this moves the projects from pilots to production much faster, because the bottleneck for any of these generative AI projects that we have seen is the risk and governance teams need to be enabled with the right information like this, so that they can give certification that, hey, yes, this is now ready to move to production. The next step of after red teaming is, of course, like you need to fix those vulnerabilities. So the process is called as alignment. So we want to make sure that these LLMs don't exhibit like malicious content out of it and don't leak any sensitive information, right? So the benefit that you get is primarily like these are aligned to human values and customized to your own application, right? So out of the box, these models are not that helpful for your use case. So you need to do alignment training there after you red team them. So once you have you have red teamed it, you have fixed those vulnerabilities. Now you are looking to deploy the model. Okay, so you use guardrails when you have deployed it, so that at the input and output end of your LLM or your application, you make sure that your privacy, security, and moderation needs are addressed. And the way this works is primarily it acts as a layer in between your users and your application. So you could do like content moderation, like topic detection, toxicity, and then injection attack detection, and making sure that any of the confidential information that you send is not getting leaked to third party. So you could easily set that up. So the benefits from these, of course, are numerous, right? You have a generative AI specific threat detection and response, and you can save on generative AI spend by blocking malicious attempts, because running LLMs and every single inference on LLM is costlier. Guardrails helps minimize that cost. And then, of course, like you would have seen like Air Canada chatbot and a lot of these chatbots doing like rogue, and they lost like millions of dollars in stock value. So you could always minimize legal and brand risk by having the right guardrails in place. The guardrails could also be used. What we are seeing in the field with our customer right now is that we thought it would be just at the prompt input and response end, but they are using it during in data ingestion side, in the sense that because they have also noticed some data poisoning in their training data. So with that, they are using our guardrails for blocking any malicious threats that are already embedded into their current databases. Last but not the least is now I'm ready to deploy it. Now if there is a requirement for it, we have come up with an SDK which could easily just like how you deploy a container with Seldon or with Kserve, you could deploy an encrypted container onto the CVM, and you get like an encrypted input and then encrypted output back from the application. So you're end-to-end encrypted there. There's a demo out there on, we are partners with IBM and Red Hat, so you could have a look at the demo of how it works end-to-end encrypted. So basically the goal is, we make the code, data, and model inaccessible and prevent tampering when deployed in third-party infrastructure, so that your model IP is protected when your encrypted container is in your customer's hands. So in a nutshell, this is about Enkrypt AI. I talked about all the risks involved. Finally, about us is we are a comprehensive solution for generative AI security, privacy, risk. The way we do it by providing seamless monitoring, very comprehensive red teaming, and state-of-the-art guardrails and alignment training. So that's about me and Enkrypt AI. Thank you. I kept it short, so please, any questions? Yeah.
1 second.
Oh, you were
sorry,
first.
Sorry.
So you mentioned that you have a framework for evaluating this kind
Sorry?
of... You mentioned that you have a framework for evaluating this kind of safety issues, and you mentioned a framework, a leaderboard and whatnot. I'm curious, how does that compare to what exists, like the decoding trust framework, or like frameworks from other vendors? In what way is it different? What's novel with it, or different with it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with decoding trust. In fact, that came out in January. We came out in late December, early January, but we announced it in March. So I think we made a mistake there of not announcing it early there. Even before decoding trust, we had red teaming in place there. So I would say that, but they are also a very comprehensive solution there, but they're not production grade. And they do it on only 30 prompts. We do it on 7,000 prompts, so that we are more, we have 7 categories that we have defined, 40 subcategories, and then 400 subcategories, each one having 10 prompts. So you can go to 4,000, which are continuously evolving. These are not static. Decoding trust, I'm familiar with that very well. They have a static set of prompts. So what that means is you could overfit your model to that and bypass that, right? So the key here is as your model evolves, your red teaming also should evolve. So your safety should also keep evolving. So that's what we are known for. In fact, we have been evaluated against a couple of other solutions as well. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a Texas thing. I guess the short version is, where do you fit in? You had one little slide on the architecture stuff. Are you protecting additional RAG stuff added onto it? Are you only protecting the LLM? Where do you fit in the stack there?
Yeah.
And what's the overhead of doing this when you start doing preventative?
Correct.
How does the user experience a denial or
I just removed some proprietary stuff before the talk, so I'll try and find that.
Get it somewhere.
Yeah, I'll try and find that. So basically, yes, it's very seamless integration into RAG pipelines as well. I'm not able to find it, unfortunately, but it's very seamless because we are API driven. The key factor there is latency. Yeah. So we have all the optimizations that one can think of deployed onto our guardrails. So the hit, yes, there is always going to be a hit with guardrails or any kind of firewall. We try and keep it as minimal as possible.
What is the user experience when something is denied?
So that's up to the end application. So we keep it, because sometimes what happens is the chatbot, there should be a pop-up saying, hey, don't do that. But some do have like funny ways of saying the same thing. So we keep it customizable there. So they can do it whatever they want, because we don't want to be in charge. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Prashanth, thanks for the presentation. I have a follow-up question to the question that was asked before. So in general, if you think about all of the solutions that are coming out, there are fewer players now, but a lot are emerging around providing similar solutions. How do you think about differentiating sort of in this landscape?
Yeah, so I'm very well aware of the competitors, both in academia as well as in the industry. But I bet you one thing, nobody's as comprehensive as us in terms of red teaming, alignment, guardrails, and then deployment. There are players in red teaming, there are players in guardrails. There's not many players in alignment at the moment. But who is going to look, when you go to a CISO, it's kind of like who has the best solution out there as well as who has the most comprehensive solution out there. So we aim to be the best and the most comprehensive solution because it's a pipeline. you need to be well integrated into the pipeline for safety alignment of these models and deployment. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's thank Prashanth again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.